Do y'all think that the better team won, or was this just a bad game?
They got a cloud hanging over their head.
You execute when you're supposed to execute, and we didn't do that. They were the better team in that game.
Well, a surprise in interconference play, a surprise outside of the conference, looking at you, Notre Dame, and another exciting week of college football is in the books, and we're here to talk about the big games, hand out some helmet stickers for standout performances, make predictions for next week, and once again, we are privileged to have a phenomenal guest on the show. More on that later. Jesse, how was your weekend?
It was great. I am officially a fan of the Northern Illinois University Huskies.
Yep.
Let's go. Nothing sparked more joy than that game. Nothing sparked more anxiety than my own game. So we're making it. The NFL is back. I got to hear Tom Brady's beautiful voice and see his lovely face on a game. So here we are.
Matt, yourself, how was the weekend?
Just took a little trip to Charlotte, and I didn't, but the boys did, and I hesitate to use the word curb stomp, but it went really well for us.
Pretty much.
But they should stay, honestly, because the Panthers are not doing well. The Vols should stay and help. Things are not okay.
Bring them on back to Knoxville. We don't need to stay in Charlotte.
I could not handle the mayo eating contest, though. I had to turn it off.
That is a bridge too far. That is a bridge too far. We can't with that again.
Charlotte,
not necessary.
maybe dial it back.
Overall, the weekend's been pretty good. A lot of people got exposed yesterday, which makes me happy. And there's a lot of question marks. For a lot of teams, including one for one of the co-hosts here. Just saying, we got issues. We have issues.
All right, well, let's go ahead
some key learnings that we all need to realign on.
That's it.
There's some low-hanging fruit that we need to level set.
Let's go ahead and get into those games.
Always remember, if you ain't first, you're last.
All right, so yesterday we had the first game we had was Texas at Michigan. Texas won this one 31-12. Jesse got the point here. So Texas looked great. I mean, not gonna lie, and they dominated the line of scrimmage. They might have the best O-line in the country after that performance. Michigan, just reminding folks, Michigan replaced 10 starters on offense, which is rough. And it showed. They just could never get anything going, really. So,
Wes, you're wrong. They replaced 11.
11?
11. You're missing Connor Stallions.
Oh yeah, that's
12.
Right. That's right.
Harbaugh.
Oh,
certainly a lot of turnover.
I don't count khaki pants.
Yeah.
Well, you're right, because he didn't know anything about anything that was happening on the team. So fair.
Apparently his team and was it the Raiders, whoever they were playing, they just had like a brawl today and he was running out on the field. So good times. But yeah, statement win by Texas here, though. Not to take anything away from them. A great win. So Jesse, what were your thoughts on Texas at Michigan?
My thoughts, other than unadulterated joy, I mean, it was the one time I've cheered for Texas because I'm hateful. It's fine. I'm okay with it. But again, I think, and we talked about it a little bit when we did our deep dive into Texas, but it makes our conference at least look good when we bring in somebody and they do well outside of the conference and they represent us well. That's good for everybody, right?
Sure.
So I'm excited about that. I think I'm also very, very nervous for the rest of the SEC when it comes to Texas. They've obviously jumped to the number 2 spot today in the AP poll, whatever you want to put stock in the AP poll. But it's true. The 6 out of the top 7 spots in the AP poll are SEC teams. That's incredible. And so I think this is, if you're a Texas fan, you were already excited going into the season. You already had a lot of hype. You were ready to come out here and at least make a play for the SEC, if not make a play in the top 12. So we'll see. But I think this is a great showing from the Longhorns here. They were poised. And yes, I know that it's not the same Michigan team as last year, but you got 3 turnovers for Michigan. We always talk about if you're not going to win the turnover battle, you're not going to win the game. But for Texas to go into the Big House and put up a performance like this, not just like win by a field goal, right, but stomp them, right?
Dominated.
That's insane. We'll talk later on about playing in really hard stadiums. The Big House is a very hard stadium to play in. And that yellow,
unless you're Appalachian State,
then it's okay. But that yellow, it costs your eyes. And
yeah. I love the maize yellow. It's a good color.
It doesn't show up well on the TV. I don't like it. No. It makes me uncomfortable. I don't like it, but I also don't like orange. So here we are. But no, I think if anybody had doubts about Quinn Ewers going into this season and whether or not he'd be able to step up and truly lead this team, I think he led them really well yesterday.
Under so much pressure. I mean, imagine that with the pressure of having Arch Manning behind you, knowing that everyone wants to see this guy play. I mean, it's just absolutely that amount of pressure on top of the regular amount of pressure that you have as starting QB at any big school. Matt, your thoughts on this one?
I was happy to see this, to be honest. I feel like Michigan, they got their gold star last year, and I feel like for some of them it's gone to their head, including the gentleman that I spoke to on TikTok about that, who went for afterward, deleted his comment. So MT, if you're watching this, haha, sucks to be you. That being said, yeah, I'm petty. I don't care. That being said, I have a conundrum here. First off, this is a great win by Texas. It looks great on paper. The stat line that really jumped out to me was Texas's defense making them Michigan go 3 for 12 on third down. That's quite the achievement considering the success that Michigan had last year. Now, here's my question. Was this a really great Texas team or was this a really bad Michigan team? Which is it? We'll know the answer to that question here in the next couple of weeks. But Texas looks scary. It makes me wonder if we're going to get a battle of 1 and 2 when we finally get to that Texas-Georgia matchup here in October, is it?
Gosh, I think it's. I have to go back and look at the schedule. It's
not October 19th.
No, it's in Austin.
October 19th. Yeah,
Georgia has to go on the road against Bama and Texas this year.
That's right.
And the only other big team that Texas is going to have to, unless they fall to a trap, the only other team they're going to have to worry about is Oklahoma. Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But yeah, kudos to Quinn Ewers. I mean, almost 250 yards in the air, 3 touchdowns is a good outing. So
yeah. All right, let's move to Arkansas at Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State won this exciting game, 39-31. Nobody got the point here. We all picked Arkansas in our optimistic state that we were in. Look, good on Arkansas for making a game out of it. They actually did well just to tie it up to send it to overtime. And their offense went off for nearly 650 yards, but they gave up too much in the end. And even though they tied it up at the end to go to overtime, OK State was able to score and hold off Arkansas to get the win in second OT. So Matt, let's talk to you first. What are your thoughts on this one here?
I feel so bad for Sam Pittman because just when it looks like things are going to start to line up, you end up with it just getting snatched away from you. Going into the half, Arkansas is up 21-7. And you're thinking, okay, well, this looks a lot like a lot of the other SEC blowouts that we've seen over the last couple weeks. Arkansas is going to find a way to nuke Oklahoma State and get away with a win here. But that's just not the way the cookie crumbled, and you ended up with it falling apart in the second half. Oklahoma State outscores them 24-10 in the second half, and you got a point, Wes. They're very lucky they were able to pull this back to overtime, to force overtime, and I feel bad. I feel really bad that, especially when your quarterback throws for over 400 yards in the air, and they bottled up Ollie Gordon. He only had 50 yards and a touchdown. They did a pretty good job of holding him down. Offensively, they didn't do a whole lot. And you almost get 700 yards and you still lose the game. It's just bad. It's just really bad. Turnovers are the story of this game.
It's
That too.
penalties.
Yeah.
That is what's so frustrating about watching this game is it was undisciplined football. You are about to potentially win this game, right? Like I couldn't remember if it was in OT or if it was still in regulation play, but I think it was OT. You have a personal or unnecessary roughness call.
Yeah, I saw that call.
What are you doing? And then they get the first down and then they move on. You cannot do that. Sam Pittman was about to lose his mind over there, which I get it. You have 3 turnovers. Can't do that. Yes, Oklahoma State had 1 as well, but they had 3 turnovers and so many penalties. To me, half of the reason they lost, if not more, was because they beat themselves. And it's just, you can't do that. It was honestly kind of devastating. And I'm not even an Arkansas fan.
Right.
But we'll see that. We'll continue to see that penalty bug all the way through this weekend.
Yeah. I am interested to see how Arkansas does moving forward. I feel like they have that spark. They on offense, they're really clicking, but just maybe a little bit more discipline. That might be what they need to turn the corner.
Y'all are playing for Sam Pittman's job. Do better.
For real. For real.
Listen, it's not.
Yeah.
Take a note from South Carolina. Do better. You're playing for your coach's job.
That's right.
Nah, well, they don't have to.
Anyway, let's move to California at Auburn. Cal won this one 21-14. Nobody got the point here again. The story, I mean, I can't really drone on about this game too much because the story is really Auburn's 5 turnovers. You don't take care of the ball like that, and it's nearly impossible to win. So, Jesse, your thoughts on Cal winning this one in Auburn?
I'm just going to retweet again, undisciplined football. I mean, just you've got to take care of the fundamentals and you've got to hold on to the football. This begins and ends right there, especially at home against Cal.
Yeah. Yeah. Matt, your thoughts?
I don't. They beat Cal last year. And you would have thought playing at home in Jordan-Hare in the middle of the afternoon on a beautiful fall day, you would have thought Auburn would find a way to win this ball game. But man, you can't throw four interceptions in a ball game and expect to win. You just can't. Not unless you're also going to throw for 6 touchdowns. It's not going to pan out. Peyton Thorne really struggled in this one, and I feel like you could partially put some of that maybe on the offensive line. It did look like a couple of those interceptions were because he was hurried. He didn't really have a good pocket on a couple of them. There were a couple of them, though, that were just like, where was he throwing? Who was he throwing it to? That last one that sealed up the game.
Right.
It didn't look like there was an Auburn player within 15 feet of that one. Right. I mean, it's very disappointing. And you know the rump of the Pac-12 as it is coming in and stealing a win from the SEC is not really. It does not spark joy. To quote Jesse.
Yeah. All right. So one matchup that really surprised at least me. I don't know. South Carolina at Kentucky. South Carolina winning this one 31-6. Nobody got the point here.
Losing at home this weekend.
That was the theme. Yeah. Every time I turned around this game, it seemed like Kentucky was shooting themselves in the foot with some penalty or lack of execution.
11 of them. They had 11 penalties in this game.
Yeah. Not trying to take any credit away from South Carolina. Obviously, they did what they needed to do, and then some. Matt, your thoughts on South Carolina at Kentucky?
I don't understand South Carolina. They make no sense to me. There's nothing consistent about them. They're the Jekyll and Hyde of the SEC. Like 1 week they look great, 1 week they look like they can't line up straight. Like it makes no sense. I just don't get what we're doing. If you're a Carolina fan, you got to explain it to me like I'm 5, because I don't get it. It doesn't make sense, and I'm very confused. I also need someone to explain to me what the heck happened to Brock Vandagriff. 3 for 10 for 30 yards and an interception. Kentucky fans on Twitter were going nuts for this guy when he got brought up from Georgia, and you would have thought that he would be like the guy, and he's not been the guy. I mean, the backup came in and had a better QBR than he did. It's got to be very disheartening for Kentucky fans, and I have my issues with some Kentucky fans on Twitter, but like. Gracious, you got to feel bad because you think, okay, Kentucky's in that Midland spot. They'll find a way to get to a really decent bowl game. If you're losing to Carolina, who struggled last week with the cupcake that they had on the table, like this does not look good, especially when you do it at home in front of your own fans. It's a bad look all around.
Yeah.
Also, Beamer's a schmuck. Just throwing that out there.
We couldn't get out of there without that.
No, we can't because, duh.
Jesse, your thoughts?
This one was fascinating to watch when you're not a fan of either. I have to imagine that Vegas hates South Carolina because you can't accurately predict the odds. You really can't. But talking about Brock Vandagriff, his offensive line did not protect him. They struggled. Carolina's defense was just on him, and they didn't seem to make adjustments. I mean, I don't know what it was with Kentucky. They could not make adjustments because every little bit you're like, okay, maybe in the third, I thought they might be getting their feet. Nope. You have this, 2 back-to-back touchdowns by South Carolina, one of which comes after a horrible offsides penalty on 4th and 1 that extended that drive, and you're able to get a touchdown there and a double-digit lead for Carolina. But it just wasn't great. The Wildcats were 3 for 14 on 3rd down and failed on both 4th down, attempted conversion. They couldn't do it. They could not do it. Vandagriff was in the dirt constantly. And it just seemed like everything was going Carolina's way. Again, Kentucky didn't seem like they were adjusting or playing very disciplined football. They only had 183 total yards of offense for Kentucky. That's insane to me. I mean, sure, they can be Midland, but still, right?
We didn't think they were Midland that much.
We did not
think
they were that
we did not.
Like, to put it in perspective, the overall yardage that Carolina allowed for Kentucky was the lowest since they held Eastern Illinois to 109 like 3 years ago. Not great. I think Coach Stoops understands that was not the performance they wanted. It sucks when you do that at home, especially since we considered this would be a win. It was just another weird vibe of the weekend that happened for the home teams.
Yeah. Well, a lot of these other games were blowouts, but obviously, Matt, I want to give you the opportunity to talk about Tennessee's just dominance of NC State and get your thoughts on that one.
I thoroughly enjoyed every aspect of this game. I was nervous going into it. My battered Vol syndrome was in pretty severe overdrive going into kickoff for this. I thought one of two things was going to happen. Either we were going to nuke them or we were going to come out and we were going to find a way to lose the ball game. Luckily, it was the first one, not the second one. I was really impressed with Tennessee's defense. I felt like they did a great job of kind of shutting down everything NC State threw at them. There were a lot of tackle for losses in this particular ball game. Nico Iamaleava. I can't say it. Iamaleava. One of these days.
It's fine. Practice
fine.
Makes perfect.
Everybody struggles. Nico looks great. There were a couple plays. He had 2 picks in this game, but I felt like the first one was a bit of a mistake on his part because he thought the route was going to be different, so he kind of overshot it or whatever. The second one got tipped at the line and flew like 400 feet in the air. It was essentially a punt at that point. But Nico looked great. We're going to talk a little bit about Dylan Sampson when we get to helmet stickers in just a bit. No spoilers. But yeah, I keep waiting to see where the chinks in the armor are with this team, and I haven't seen them yet. Now, I say that, and I know that we've played NC State, and we've also played a cupcake last week. So I'm hopefully optimistic, but I'm waiting for reality to set in, and I'm hoping that it never does. We look good. We look great. I just hope we can keep up that momentum. On a sidebar, personal note, though, if you're one of those NC State fans, come here, come close. Let me talk to you for a second. If you're one of those NC State fans that spent the entire week last week talking so much trash
Why?
on
Why do
Twitter.
people do that? I don't.
Like,
I don't
like
understand it.
I get it. You're trash talking. It's fine. Listen, do better. Do better. Like if you're gonna talk that much crap, at least own up to it. Not go back and delete and block people after you've already been exposed as the fraud that you are. Anyway, yeah, there was one particular NC State Twitter account that has spent most of the last week dogging Nico in particular, wishing harm upon him and hoping that he would blow out his ACL after the game was over, was a particular spot that I took personal offense to. So yeah, screw that guy.
I don't understand why people love to harass kids about this stuff. I mean, I guess Stetson Bennett wasn't really a kid at the time, but it makes me think about releasing his cell phone number of the Tennessee fans
Oh
did
yeah,
that right before that game.
that
I'm
was not
like,
a good look.
why? What are we doing? Like these are,
Yeah,
You don't need to
anyways.
wish harm. Like, don't ever wish an injury, especially like an ACL. Like, come on. I mean,
yeah,
this is
be better.
a person. It's just a person. It's a child. Let's just.
Yeah.
And here's the thing: I'm not usually the one on, and I've spent most of today doing this, so that's the only reason why I bring it up. I'm not usually the guy that goes back on Twitter and starts posting like the screen grab of the scoreboard and posting it on tweets, but I have done that, and most of all, Twitter has done that over the last 24 hours because NC State bit off way more than they could chew. Anyway,
Oh,
I'm done. Let's talk about the other games.
yeah, I think when people talk smack, I mean, they deserve to eat crow. I mean, it's like that's why I don't do it because I don't want to do that. I don't want to
Exactly
eat
why I
crow.
don't do it either. I don't want no crow tastes awful.
Exactly. Does anyone want to talk about the midnight game, Arizona State beating Mississippi State? It ended up being a closer game. Arizona State was running away with it there for a little bit. I think it was like 27-3, or I don't know what the score was. It was a lot to a little at halftime, but then Mississippi State made a game of it, but just not enough in the end.
Can we take a minute and talk about Vanderbilt? Like,
yeah, they're 2-0.
Like nuking everybody they've played so far. Granted, I know it's 2 games, but
and it's Alcorn State.
I mean, like I'm getting those same vibes that we got.
They shut someone out.
They did. What was and they hung 50 on them.
Yeah.
What year was it when Vanderbilt went to was it like 2018 or something where they were all gunned up? It was going into the Bama game. They said we want
like 4-0?
That one, yeah.
Bama, you're next.
Or something
Alabama,
like that.
you're
Yeah.
next.
Like that's the same kind of vibe I'm getting right now, and I'm here. I'm totally here for it.
Yeah.
And I say that as somebody that hates Vanderbilt. Like my wife has a Vanderbilt T-shirt, and every time she wears it, I'm like, why do you have that? Like, why did we spend money on that shirt? Get rid of it. Give it to the dog so the dog can lay in it. Like that's where I'm at with Vanderbilt most days. I hope Vanderbilt wins every game except for the one against Tennessee. I really do.
And then the one outlier here that we have not talked about is Oklahoma barely beat lowly Houston 16-12. That was actually a really close game, and Houston had a legit chance at winning that one for a little bit.
Yeah, they did.
So
I would be curious what our guests from a couple weeks ago thought, because that's the choice. If he's watching, let us know. Send us an email or a tweet or something.
The home teams were struggling this.
It was a struggle for a lot of them. Yeah.
Hey, so the score of our game does not accurately represent how that game went. Let me just tell you, because we legitimately did not start playing football until there was less than 9 minutes left in the game.
Yeah. I don't know how I glazed over that. I did want to get your thoughts on that game.
I caught it, Wes. I was going to circle back to it. Jesse needed a moment. So
I literally the whole time I'm just screaming, you cannot do this on Nick Saban's name day. Like you
exactly. That was
that's right. I forgot it was that too.
Dedicated the field to this man, and you're going to do this. And I was texting a friend of mine today. I think the only thing that saved, yes, you look at the score, it looks like we blew them out. No. No. If for some reason we had either lost, or even with the score that we have right now, the only thing that made the Alabama faithful and the Alabama rabid not so rabid, and we are, don't get me wrong, is because Nick Saban struggled with this team last season. It was just in Florida. So that I think saved a lot of people being like, get rid of him. He was the wrong hire, whatever. We did not play disciplined football. We had so many bonehead penalties, and our offensive line, Proctor, one of our tackles, is injured, so we had to throw somebody else at tackle. It was not next man up mentality. I'll tell you that right now, because it was rough. It was bad. We were making so many mistakes, and hands down to USF. I mean, they were doing it, and it was not looking good for us. I mean, when you are cheering because the punter is really kicking it, it's not great. So that was not indicative. That score is not indicative of how that game went, and the years off of my life that were taken.
Yeah. All right, and let's do a new segment called Helmet Stickers. And
wait. Hold on, Wes. You got to update the score. What's the tally?
Oh, well, I do have that up there. I was going to do that afterwards. Pick 'em points. I've got 12. Okay. Jesse's got 10, and Matt's got 4. Again, we've got a lot of football left to be played. So
yeah, because we have 45 teams in the conference. We have
45 teams in the SEC now. So yeah.
So there's so many games.
Yeah.
There's a couple. There's definitely a couple.
So let's start a new segment, Helmet Stickers, where we give helmet stickers out to the 2 best players, or
we have stickers.
Players, yeah.
By the way, I don't know if
we do.
Oh, the thing's being dumb. See, there's one. There's a sticker.
We do have stickers. We do have merch. Check it out. Link in bio. And so yeah, let's go ahead and get started with that. Matt, who are your helmet sticker receivers for this week?
Okay, so first off, I love the idea of helmet stickers. I remember watching Game Day Final back in like the mid-aughts, early teens, when Mark May, who I don't still like to this day, and Lou Holtz would hand out helmet stickers to end the show. So I loved it. Anyway, so my helmet stickers, I got 2 of them. First one for Dylan Sampson. Big night from him. This is his 3rd straight game where he's eclipsed 100 yards in the game. He did it with Iowa in the bowl game, did it last week, did it again this week over NC State. In this particular game, he had 132 yards on 20 carries, and then he also had 37 yards reception on 3 carries. Dylan Sampson is a bear, and he's going to be someone that the SEC is going to have to keep an eye out for going forward. So he definitely gets a helmet sticker for me this week. The other person that gets a helmet sticker for me this week, I think, is Quinn Ewers. Quinn has had a lot going on. You know, you're the head QB at a very prestigious university like the University of Texas. Like, there's a lot of pressure there, and he's excelled. He's done a great job. He had a great game against Michigan. Like we said, 240 plus yards, 3 TDs in the air. Also, he has a cameo in the Dr. Pepper commercials, the Fansville commercials. So that also gets him a helmet sticker for me. So, again, great effort all around. Definitely deserving.
Yeah. Jesse, your helmet stickers for the week?
Yeah, I was glad you brought up his Dr. Pepper Fansville cameo, because I thought that was hilarious. But my first one is going to be Lenore Sellers, obviously one of the quarterbacks that played for South Carolina in their win against Kentucky this weekend. But again, big shoes to fill coming in for Spencer Rattler, who was definitely a leader of the team. Love his glasses. We're loving those. But he was 11 for 15, 159 passing yards. And he had 2 touchdowns. He threw for 2 touchdowns. I thought that was a big step for Carolina, knowing that quarterback is still somewhat of a question. I mean, he's definitely the starter, but they did throw in Robbie Ashford a little bit. And I think when you saw them both playing, it was clear that Sellers was the choice. So he gets a helmet sticker for me this week. That's a huge win for South Carolina, and one that he was a key component of, and showed a lot of moxie and a lot of poise there. And then my second one, we didn't talk about the game because it was not really a game, and I know that it was a small opponent, but I'm going to give my second helmet sticker to Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart actually completed his first 24 passes to set an SEC and a school record, finishing 25 of 27 for 377 yards. So again, they had a huge victory. It was over Middle Tennessee, but that is a great great stat. Huge for them. When you set a record, I think you get a little bit of a helmet sticker. And in his post-game interview, he was very, very humble. So I appreciate that too.
Yeah. What did Kirk Herbstreit say yesterday about one of the stats? He said that's good against air. So, sometimes it doesn't matter who the opponent is.
There you go.
I love Kirk Herbstreit. I don't care what anyone says. Y'all can, especially FSU fans, they have nothing good to say about Kirk.
That's true. Yeah. My two stickers. First of all, the first sticker goes to Taylon Green at Arkansas with over 400 yards in the air and 61 yards on the ground in a losing effort at Okie State, but still excited for his future at Arkansas. We'll see more about that, but he's got things clicking right now. And then my second sticker goes to the Texas offensive line, who just absolutely dominated the game in Michigan and just set the tone for that game. And the beatdown that they gave out. So kudos to them. All right, well, that does it for our helmet stickers section. And now we are privileged to be joined by a very special guest. And let's go ahead and get started with that interview. Well, today we are privileged to welcome Dan Thompson to the program. Dan is a co-host of the Stadium and Gale podcast, the flagship podcast for the Flagship Florida University and the #1 ranked Florida Gators podcast. Dan, we're honored to have you on. Welcome.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for having me.
And like I was saying before we started, Dan, I think you're the first Florida fan we've had on the program, so we are thrilled to talk to you.
Yes. As much as my family is trying to convince me that I'm a Gator, I refuse.
I've got to know more about that story. No, but it's an absolute pleasure to be welcomed by you guys and always look forward to chatting about the Florida Gators. Some years more happily than this year, maybe. But no, super excited to be here.
Right. And obviously we have different fandoms represented here. And one thing that we try to do on the podcast is, yes, we will disagree, but we try to do it respectfully. So it's going to be fun.
We're all about inclusivity here at
That's right.
We love us some inclusivity.
There's enough name calling out there, right? We can do better. So first off, let's start with the basics, Dan. So how did you become a Florida fan?
Yeah, no, grew up a Florida Gators fan. My mom went to the University of Florida in the late 70s, right around the time of Chris Collinsworth. My dad played baseball at Ohio State, so I ended up cheering for both when I was deciding on colleges. Ultimately ended up at the University of Florida, which was an absolute privilege and honor to be there. I was there for their second basketball national championship and 2 football national championships during that 4 years. And one of the coolest experiences I had, I got to work in the football recruiting office for all 4 of those years. So I got to know a lot of those players, coaches, and support staff. So really a really cool time to be there. But, I'll say I was always a fan of the University of Florida, cheered them on, but I played hockey growing up. So a lot of our hockey games and everything else were during football Saturdays. And if I wasn't playing hockey, I was working. So really the fandom and the football fandom didn't really, come into its true form until college.
Gotcha. That's cool. And so one thing that we love to talk about on the show here is pageantry tradition, the different schools. And so what are some Florida traditions that we should be aware of? Obviously, I know there's some that, we just inherently know about just from being around the sport. But what are some that we should know about, maybe well-known that we want to rehash, or maybe some that are a little more obscure, maybe?
Yeah, the 2-bitch chant at the beginning of the game is probably the one that a lot of fans have heard of or seen. That was done by the same guy for about 60 years, and now they'll bring in an honorary person. He has since passed away. They'll bring in an honorary person. A couple weeks ago, it was Javon Curse. I'm not sure who it was.
Saw him, yeah.
Week, but they'll bring in a famous athlete, a famous former player, somebody who's an Olympian, whoever it might be, to lead that chant. So that's a big one, obviously. A lot of schools do the alternating colors, so they'll do the orange and blue chant from the east side of the stadium to the west side of the stadium. They'll do that back and forth. They will do the "We Are the Boys of Old Florida." It's a song that everybody at the end of the third quarter will lock arms with one another and sing and sway to that song. And then after Tom Petty passed away, they started playing Tom Petty after that in the third quarter going into the fourth. So those are the biggest. There used to be a "Move Back, You Suck" chant when there was a penalty that got axed. And then the Gator bait chant, notoriously got axed back in 2020. So that's one that I know fans want to bring back. But those are probably the biggest, I would say, of some of the SEC schools. Florida has some rich traditions, but probably not as cool as maybe the Eagle, coming down from the sky boxes at Auburn, or the Boomer Schooner, which again we'll talk about if Oklahoma's an SEC school just yet. But no, it's been cool. It's a cool experience. It's 92,000 fans each and every week.
Right. Yeah, Swamp, a tough place to play for sure. So in the theme of tradition and stuff, what are some key go-to spots on game day? What are some places where you just have to check out?
Yeah. So what's cool about the stadium is that it's right next to an area called Midtown. So when I was in college, Midtown is really the main bar district in Gainesville. They've really developed and built out downtown, and then they have this new area called Innovation Square that they've done a lot of work to. So compared to the options that students and alumni have now, compared to what it was, 10, 15 years ago, certainly a lot more options. If you're looking for Midtown bars, Balls and Salty Dog, or your two mainstays, there's a brand new bar that's actually run by a good friend of mine named Eric Zika, called Cantina Anejo. It just opened up last year. So that's a great spot to go, right next to the stadium, because you can kind of stumble from the bars right there. There used to be a really cool restaurant called the Swamp Restaurant, and they've since moved a couple blocks away from Sorority Row. But that's certainly used to be the place that everybody went before and after games. With it moving locations, certainly a place that people will go, but probably on Friday or early before the game, or maybe late after the game is over. But Gainesville's gone through a huge economic improvement and development over the last 10, 15 years. There's a whole slew of new restaurants and bars to go to right there. But the tailgating scene really can't be built, or can't be diminished either. That whole campus is swamped by tailgaters on a game day.
Right. Well, we talked about the Stadium and Gale podcast at the top of this. How did you come to work with them, or how did that start? Do you have like a niche area of expertise that you provide, or like what's the dynamic like on the show?
It's interesting. We started the podcast a little bit more than 5 years ago. We actually just celebrated episode 300 last month. It
Congrats.
Started with myself, Corey Knowles, and then Ahmad Black. Ahmad Black played safety at the University of Florida. All three of us were friends, and we would talk often, through text message or through Twitter, just about the game. And obviously Ahmad comes from his playing experience. Corey played junior college football. Obviously, I have no experience playing football, but having worked in the athletic department for 4 years, and then having kept in touch and had a lot of contacts, it allowed us to have three different perspectives. So we went back and forth for probably 7-8 weeks, kind of coming up with what do we want to do, what's the goal, who's the target audience. And I'll say that for podcasting, there's a lot of Florida Gator podcasts that are out there, and they all are trying to do something a little bit different. So there's a lot of different lanes for people to be in. So there's a great podcast that breaks down the X's and O's. There's a great kind of news podcast that's out there that, he does, 4 or 5 episodes a week. And so what we wanted to do was what would it be like if 3 guys went to the bar and had an intelligent conversation about the game, where we'll talk about some blown coverages, we'll talk about some route schemes or some zone concepts or whatever it might be. But at the end of the day, how is an educated football fan going to talk about the game? So that was really our goal, and we've really stayed true to that. So Ahmad was with us on the podcast for the first 2 years, and then life kind of got in the way. As you guys know, having a podcast, takes up a lot of time. So we added Nick Delatorre, who is a writer now for On3 and a beat writer for the Gators. So the three of us, our goal is to really sit down like 3 educated people to talk about the game. And then one of the big things that we do is we really try to hammer home interviews. We've got Emmett Smith coming up this upcoming Friday, which will be a lot of fun. But, we've interviewed every coach at the University of Florida now. We've interviewed a lot of the admin staff that are there. And then, probably 400 former athletes, whether they're football, basketball, baseball, swimming, diving, whatever it might be. So our goal is to try to get as kind of a holistic view on the University of Florida's athletic department as we can, and then try to break down the games when those are happening.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it. So Matt submitted the next couple questions. Matt, if you don't mind, I'll turn it over to you so you can ask Dan.
Yeah, Dan, thanks. First off, thanks for coming on. I usually don't have nice things to say about Florida, but I'm refraining from saying anything too outrageous today, just for your edification.
Appreciate that. Appreciate
Yeah.
that.
I actually, just a little fun little aside. I marched. It was a marching band for the University of Tennessee, and I was at the Swamp in '03
Okay.
when I think we won that game in the last 3 or 4 minutes. It was a
Yeah.
crazy game. But I do remember the march into the stadium. They put the tubas on either end of the color guard just to kind of make sure nobody got ridiculous. Anyway,
Yeah.
just a fun little story for you. But my question is if you had to pick a player that is your absolute favorite Gator, both past, present, whatever, who would that be?
Danny Werfel's probably the guy that sticks out to me. We've had the chance to interview him on the podcast. Just an unbelievably good dude, right? So when I was young, Danny Werfel was, led Florida and was really behind those fun and gun offenses of Steve Spurrier, and he was 6, 7, or I was 6 or 7 years old when he was really kind of getting into his prime, and just being able to watch him and who he was as an individual off the field, it just made him really easy to like. And then, obviously he maybe didn't have the NFL career that people thought that he might, but what he's been able to do with his charitable causes and everything else, I'll say him. I think that he's a great human being. Certainly watching him play football was incredible. And if you've not gotten the chance, if maybe you're a little younger, you don't really know what it was like watching Danny Werfel pass to Jock.
I know exactly about Danny Werfel. Don't worry. I remember him torching us quite a bit here and there. I think he did it one time in Neyland when I think it was like 94, 95, right?
Yeah.
I was 10. I remember it.
Yeah. 94, 95, 96. They ended up winning the national championship, beating FSU 52-20 in the Sugar Bowl there. But just watching what that offense was, I mean, that was just so much fun to watch, him and then Jacquez Green and Riedel Anthony and Ike Hilliard. I mean, you had 3 former first round draft picks or first and second round draft picks there at wide receiver. You had some great running back play there too. It was so much fun, and being young and impressionable, like that's who I remember. And that's kind of who I draw my connection back to probably the most. So we'll go with him. I know it's an easy answer, kind of a cop-out answer.
No, I don't think it is, because when you look at it, like who usually gets the credit or blame for a game it's typically the quarterback. And I mean, no one's going to deny the fact that Danny Werfel was prolific in that run and gun. So I mean, I don't think anyone's going to say boo about that. I'm just glad he didn't say Tim Tebow.
Tim's an awesome guy. I got to know his brother Peter pretty well when I was at the University of Florida. Great dude. Again, just one of those people that just kind of seems like too perfect, like a good looking dude. Yeah. Obviously was great in college, had, kind of a lackluster NFL career, and you can probably blame a lot of different reasons for that, but then goes and does all these charitable things, as a big event for Down syndrome folks every year, special needs folks, to have them have a prom. Then he goes and marries Miss Universe, and
I have heard about that.
I mean, you guy can't seem to do anything wrong. So shout out to Tim Tebow.
Must be nice. He probably needs to hang out with Tyreek Hill and teach him a thing or two. So my next question is here on the podcast. You've got Wes, who's a Georgia fan. Jesse's a Bama fan. We've had Texas people on. We've had Oklahoma people on. I think you're actually our first guest that's been the old version of the SEC, right, Wes? I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
One of the big things. Oh no, we had Mississippi State on. I forgot about Emily.
All right.
But one of the big things here, especially with the SEC, is rivalries. And there's a long history of rivalries and back and forth and good old fashioned hate and all the different things that kind of go into that. So I would like you to, in 500 words or less, give us your pure, unfiltered feelings on Florida's, what I would say is probably their 2 biggest rivals, which would be Tennessee and Georgia. Yeah. But I do want to throw in there real quick. My mom does listen to this podcast. Okay. So let's keep it PG-13.
Yeah,
please.
No, my mom will, when we share this, my mom and dad will be listening too. So, it's interesting because when I was in college, I think we beat Tennessee all 4 years, and then we beat Georgia 3 of those 4 years. And the one year that Georgia won was the year that they all stormed the field and started dancing in the end zone and all that kind of stuff. Brandon Spikes was able to repay the favor the next year. But I'll tell you what, it stinks right now with Georgia being as good as they are. There's
Doesn't
nothing
it?
more
It's the
frustrating.
worst.
I
We can
mean,
all agree on that.
just a
Oh my.
frustrating fan base to be at the top of the pedestal right now. Their fans are
New
barking.
money. It's new
They're
money.
wearing the chest pads with the spikes on them. One of the my favorite Steve Spurrier quotes is he's like, I always liked playing Georgia in the first 2 games of the year because you could always count on a few players being suspended.
I'm familiar with that one.
That's a
I
great
would
line.
love nothing more than Kirby Smart to be tapped on the shoulder and say, hey, it's time for you to go to the NFL the same way Nick Saban did when he was at LSU. And I will never forgive Nick Saban for leaving my Miami Dolphins to go to Alabama, because not only did he choose Dante Culpepper over Drew Brees, he left us in the middle of the night, and then he goes on this unbelievable run. So Nick Saban is Satan in my book. But I'll tell you what.
Easy, Jesse. Take it easy, Jesse. Relax. Take a breath.
After yesterday.
I asked for his pure and unfiltered thoughts.
I know.
That's what we're getting.
That's fine.
I'll tell you what. No, Nick Saban is the GOAT of college football coaching. I'll tell you what. I obviously Florida and Georgia play every year in Jacksonville. I always had great experiences with them. The fan base is great, other than the ones that are barking at you. But I was able to go.
I don't do that. Just for the record, I don't.
Wes is one of the good ones. He doesn't do that.
He does not do that.
I love that. So we went to the Florida-Tennessee game in 2009 up in Neyland. I had a great time in Knoxville. Went to Calhoun's after the game, which was a lot of fun. But had a great experience there. I mean, other than the fact that the seats that they sold to the University of Florida to then that they sold to the student section were, I mean, you were high-fiving God when they scored a touchdown, right? So, so that was a lot of fun. It's funny. I don't really have a lot of negative things to say about SEC fans as a whole. I think most of them enjoy the pageantry. Care a lot about their team, but at the end of the day, as long as you're not fighting people, and that can be in any fan base. I saw 2 Florida Gator fans fighting last year at the UF Tennessee game. I'm like, what are we doing here? Right? This is sport. So, no, I've always had great experiences. Tennessee fans are, I'll give you guys credit. You guys are probably the most wild of the fan bases that have been around in terms of what you guys wear and just kind of the hodgepodge of the population that it brings out. It's entertaining.
Yeah. So Dan, I don't know if you have to be careful about what you say, but I am curious as your thoughts on Billy Napier. Obviously, I know that things haven't necessarily gone according to plan. How does the average Florida fan, or maybe more importantly, Florida booster, I don't know, feel currently about Billy Napier? And my other question is, will he get any kind of reprieve this season due to, obviously it's an incredibly tough schedule. Does that give him any kind of leeway?
So the Billy Napier question is complex, right? Because obviously he is still under 500 as head coach at the University of Florida. He took over a pretty disastrous situation from Dan Mullen, from a development perspective, from a strength and conditioning perspective, from a recruiting perspective, probably more than anything. If you look at Florida's roster, almost everybody that played last year and most of the team this year are people that Billy Napier had to bring in either from the transfer portal or guys that he recruited. So you have a lot of sophomores that are playing this year, had a ton of freshmen. I think we were the team with the most freshman snaps in the FBS last year, or somewhere at least the top of the SEC in that number. So, so it was a tough situation to come into, right? So I'll give him a little bit of that. I think where Florida fans are frustrated is that Billy Napier was never known. When Kirby Smart got hired, he was known as the best defensive coordinator in college football, or one of the best defensive coordinators. When Josh Heupel got hired, he was known as one of the best offensive-minded coaches in college football. When Nick Saban got hired, obviously he had his pedigree, an incredible defensive backs coach and defensive coach. So Billy Napier was never this unbelievably well-renowned offensive coordinator, right? He was a wide receiver coach that kind of got passed up on opportunities to be an offensive coordinator, got fired from Clemson, got passed up at Alabama to be an offense coordinator. Ultimately, he ends up at Arizona State and then at Louisiana. And then at Louisiana, he was known for this kind of very structured, organizationally sound program. And that's kind of what you thought you were getting with him, right? It's going to be a clean program. It's going to have a good culture. Ultimately, the team is going to be tough. They're going to recruit the line of scrimmage really well. And then, that should work in a talent hotbed like Florida. It's just not really worked out that well. I'll say from a recruiting perspective, he's been able to recruit better than Dan Mullen. I think they figured some things out in the transfer portal a little bit later, over the last maybe year, they figured that out a little bit more. And I think that Billy Napier would have been a much better coach at Florida pre-NIL than they are now, right? So I think that there's still a lot of things that Florida's trying to figure out in NIL and the boosters that want to give to the university or give to NIL, and how stretched do they feel now knowing that Florida for the last 14 years has had very intermittent success. They haven't won the SEC since 2008. And I think they're frustrated now, right? And they're getting to a point where it's like, how much more money do we continue to put into this before it's time to pull the cord on it? That leads us to where Florida's at right now. Scott Strickland's the athletic director. He hired Dan Mullen. That kind of worked out, but ultimately didn't. The Billy Napier experiment so far isn't really working out. So does Scott Strickland then, is he potentially in the hot seat as the athletic director? Because a lot of athletic directors don't get a chance to hire a third football coach. The most latest wrinkle is that the University of Florida's president, Ben Sass, stepped down a month and a half ago, and now we have an interim president. He's the old president that retired before Ben Sass got hired. So does he feel like it's in his purview to be able to go and fire the athletic director, or what metrics exist for him to potentially make that move, right? So Florida finds itself in this like very precarious situation where it's like Billy Napier has underperformed. The organizational components seem to be somewhat better internally, but they still are making a lot of errors when it's coming out of big plays. You're calling a lot of timeouts, a lot of delay games. There's multiple infractions of having guys with the same number on the field at the same time, not having enough people on special teams. So the question that you asked at the very beginning is like, does Florida get or does Billy Napier get a reprieve because of the schedule? Like at the end of the day, Florida plays the exact same schedule next year, just reversed, right? Instead of Miami at home, now you have to go to Miami, but everybody in the SEC is the exact same. You still have to play Florida State every year. You have 2 cupcakes instead of 1. We play UCF in a couple of weeks here. So I don't know, but what my biggest fear is as a Florida Gator fan is that like it turns like from people being like positive about the momentum to now there's a lot of negativity around the program to like, when does that negativity turn into apathy? And I think that that's like where Florida can potentially find itself. And like Matt, not to like be critical of Tennessee, but like I was talking to 2 Tennessee fans yesterday at a bar, and it's like, we kind of feel like we're in the exact same situation you guys were before Josh Heupel got hired. And there's like this like new enthusiasm and new energy. But like, that's the hardest part about being a Florida fan is like, okay, fine, you fire Billy Napier, then what? Like you're going to lose all your good guys to the transfer portal likely. You're going to lose a lot of your recruiting class that's there. Like, what do you do with DJ Lagway, who just had a great game? Like, is he going to leave, right? Like, and you don't make a decision on one person, but like you can't keep cycling through coaches. Like Ron Zook was there for 3 years. Urban Meyer was there for 5. Will Muschamp was there for 3.5. Jim McElwain was there for 3. Dan Mullen was there for a little bit less than 4 years. And then now Billy Napier's been there for 3 years. So it's like, since Steve Spurrier left, your average duration of a coach is like 3 years. That's not sustainable.
Right. And it's the age old question of, if you want to fire him, fine, but who are you going to get? Right. And it's starting over every time, getting your guys in there.
Honestly, that's my next question for you. Like, let's pretend we're in a universe where he does get let go. Is there a standout, or obviously we're early in the season, but are Florida fans saying, hey, if you were to go, we want so-and-so? Like who's the guy or girl? Let's go way out there.
Yeah. Hold on a minute. I don't like the smirk, Dan. What's that all about? You're gonna have to explain that.
No, I don't know who the girl would be. I don't know, right? So Florida historically has never been an athletic department that goes and gets the big guns, right? Steve Spurrier won the ACC twice at Duke, but like not really like super well known. And obviously he played quarterback at Florida, so that makes sense. Urban Meyer's the biggest name that they've gotten, right? They beat Notre Dame out for him. But at that point, he had only had 2 years coaching at Utah. And Utah then is not the Utah that they are now, right? And they didn't have that staying power, right? So even that was like a little bit of, just kind of hedging your bets on this new up-and-comer spread coach. And like, would that work in the SEC? And obviously it did. But Will Muschamp was a defensive coordinator. Jim McElwain was at Colorado State. Billy Napier was at Louisiana. Dan Mullen was at Mississippi State, but he worked with Scott Strickland when Scott Strickland was the athletic department or director there. In basketball, Billy Donovan was not well known before he got hired. He was at Providence, I believe. Mike White was at Louisiana Tech, and Todd Golden was at the University of San Francisco. Our baseball coach was an assistant at Clemson, right? So like you think of all of those things and it's like, well, Florida's never gone big game hunting. When Florida had their position open, both Lincoln Riley's representatives and Brian Kelly's representatives reached out to Scott Strickland and they said no, because they had their mind set on Billy Napier. Obviously that didn't work out. And it's like, would Lincoln Riley or Brian Kelly have worked out better? Like, maybe, but maybe, maybe they're in the exact same situation. So Florida fans seem to be like wondering what they're going to do, right? The hot name is Lane Kiffin. They're like, oh, like he wants the Florida job. He runs the offense that everybody likes. He's got that kind of Steve Spurrier brashness about him. But if Lane Kiffin takes Ole Miss to the playoffs,
he won't go anywhere.
When could you hire him, right? January? Late December, January.
Hey, now, wait a minute now. Money talks. I mean, look at the scenario that happened in the College World Series with Texas stealing Texas A&M's baseball coach when they took them to the final. Like, I mean, or the semifinal or when it was. Like, money talks. So if Florida backs up the truck and on Lane's back in front stoop and says, hey, bring the dog and let's go. Like,
yeah, I mean, it could be, right? And what is that Brinks truck that would be backed up, right? What are the dollar amounts? I'll say that, some interesting names that have been kind of thrown around are Ryan Day. If that doesn't work out at Ohio State or he's ready to move on, if he's not had the success, is that a name? Brian Hartline is a coach that was very, very interested in coaching at the University of Florida. Do you give somebody like him who has the NFL pedigree? He's obviously the best recruiter in college football right now, or one of the best. Do you give the keys to somebody like him? Do you go after Alex Galesh, who's at USF now? If USF has a good year, but like that's the thing is like, there's not a lot of like, there's 3 coaches coaching right now that have won a national championship: Mac Brown, Kirby Smart, and Dabo Sweeney, right? Mm-hmm. So Ed Orgeron won. He's not going to get hired. Les Miles isn't going to get hired. So it's very, very hard. And like, at what point does Florida just say, we've got to stop signing these massive contracts to people that if they don't work out, we have to pay them, right? Like the fact that Billy Napier got a 7-year, $48 or $50 million contract from Louisiana is egregious to me, right? You're still paying Dan Mullen. Now you're going to potentially have to pay out Billy Napier. Like, how much money is Florida going to throw at their next coach? Or are they going to try to find like that next up and comer again?
I do hear that Bill Belichick is available.
Yeah, I mean, Nick Saban's available. Urban Meyer's available.
Don't you dare!
Oh my God! Could you imagine Nick Saban going to Florida?
I could.
Oh my God!
He's like, absolutely, I
can. Nope. I would be so upset. The field was just named after him. We would tear that stadium down.
I get it. Steve Spurrier was the head coach at South Carolina when it was Steve Spurrier Field. So, Nick Saban could be a great, I've watched College Game Day. He looks like he hates sitting next to Pat McAfee. So it might
and who blames him?
Might be time to, just say, hey, help us turn this thing around for a year or two. Obviously, Nick Saban and Urban Meyer is not coming back to the University.
No, I have heard people throw that one out there. I'm like, let's calm down. I don't think Urban's going to come back. But we never know. I would be interested to, and I apologize. I'm throwing questions at you. I did not submit them, so this is all off the cuff. And Wes and Matt are both looking and are like, I don't know where this is going.
I have nothing but faith in you, Jesse.
That's right. Yeah.
But first of all, the reason I said my family tries to make me a Gator, say I'm a Gator. I'm finishing my second master's at Florida right now. So I I attend the University of Florida right now, despite being an Alabama alumni, which was a big conflict for me, but they had the degree. So I digress. But kind of talking through former Florida, as you said before, and those really big teams, those teams that everyone was watching.
Mm-hmm.
The one that stands out is like the Tim Tebow, the Brandon Spikes, the Aaron Hernandez, right?
Yeah.
And you've got the new FX coming out about Aaron Hernandez, which I cannot wait for.
It'd be great.
We'll have to bring you back on and talk about it. But I would say, what is it like, or what was it like to see that group of individuals, and Urban Meyer as the coach? You've got sweet disciple Tim Tebow. You've got a criminal Aaron Hernandez. God bless him with so much CTE. And then you have Brandon Spikes. What was that like?
It's interesting because it wasn't just, they had, I think, 41 players get arrested on that national championship winning team. Like, they had Jermaine Cunningham got arrested for throwing a sub at a Jimmy John's. You had Tony Joyner was a safety on the team in 2006. He broke into a car lot to steal his girlfriend's car that had gotten towed, like, to get it back, right? So he did that.
Good reason. That one I get.
Well, he ended up murdering his wife like a decade later.
Sorry, okay. I shouldn't laugh at that. I just looked on Jesse's face right there when
that story took a turn.
Yeah, so I mean, and then you had like Riley Cooper. He had all of his,
Riley Cooper was on that team.
You had Percy Harvin, who had other people taking drug tests for him, so he would pass. He punched the wide receiver coach, Billy Gonzalez, in practice one time. So like, you had all of these personalities and you had so many alphas, and I don't know how it all worked out. It did. Right. And you had so many highly recruited guys, so many guys that had massive egos. And then you throw Urban Meyer into that. The fact that it all did work is like a massive exercise. Like, that would be a great dissertation for like a PhD in psychology, right?
Like a perfect storm scenario.
Yeah. But think of that time, like at UF, like you also had like my freshman year, you also had Joakim Noah on campus, Al Horford on campus.
Cam Newton was bouncing around then too, wasn't he?
Cam Newton was there in 2007, and he was in a quarterback battle with John Brantley, who was a third generation Gator. And Cam Newton stole a laptop, threw it out a window, said that he bought it, from a friend or borrowed it from a friend, but like still threw it out the window. So he had to get kicked off the team. If you listen to Cam Newton, his story was like, oh, he was never going to start at UF. It's like, well, dude, you did steal a laptop like after all of these players got arrested, right? Chris Rainey texted his girlfriend time to die. So like, you had all of this like, and these are ones I'm just like rattling off, like off memory, right? So you had all of these things, but like, to watch them play was incredible, right? In my opinion, Percy Harvin is maybe the most underrated college football player of all time. He dealt with some migraines and, some other migraines that were failed weed tests that he had, but one of the most explosive players in college football history. So watching them and being around them, they were larger than life, on campus. They all hung out in this area called the Hub, which is right next to kind of the middle of campus. And these guys just look like men amongst children walking around campus, even as 18 and 19-year-olds. I mean, I remember it was my freshman summer. So they encourage students at UF to start during the summer to get acclimated to campus and everything else. Take like 2 classes and it's really just kind of a party time. But like, I'm the same age as Tim Tebow, and I would walk next to him like, we are two diabolically differently built human beings, right? Or like Brandon Spikes would be there. I'm like, how do you even get your muscles that big, let alone like as an 18-year-old, right? So it was an incredible time to be there. And, I'll look back at that because like, I didn't want to go to UF. I wanted to go to school up in Washington, D.C. and all this other stuff, but it worked out going to Florida. And I mean, it turned out to be, the coolest experience that you can imagine.
That was an insane squad. That was my first college football game. Like, growing up an Alabama fan, we never lived close by. My parents are from there, but dad Air Force. So we didn't live there. I couldn't go. And my first college football game was in Jacksonville. It was Florida Georgia game. It was Tebow's first game back from his concussion that he got against Kentucky. He broke Herschel Walker's rushing record. It's very hard to say. And that's when Brandon Spikes tried to gouge the guy's eye out. Like,
I love it.
It was insane. Watch, to be there, and just the atmosphere was electric. And it was also really, as a fan, you know, not of either Georgia or Florida, but to be there and for those teams to both be competitive at that time, you know, obviously not the Georgia that we see right now, but
in fairness, we had Joe Cox at quarterback. God bless him. But, you know,
that was bad. That was a rough one. But I've never been to the Swamp, and this is something that I am always really curious about. There are just certain stadiums that are really hard to play in. You know, we think about Death Valley and LSU. Dear God, if you're a night game in Death Valley, blessings upon you. And I think the Swamp is one of those as well. It's so hard to play in. And we've seen that the crowd can make a difference. Being at home can make a difference for anybody. But what is it specifically about the Swamp that has that it factor where when they're playing at home, it's just that much harder for the opponent?
That's a great question. Certainly Florida's record recently at home isn't indicative of what that can be, but when the Gators are good, that is one of the toughest places to play in college football. You know, I'll say top 5. You know, I think one of the things that is interesting about Ben Hill Griffin is that it's built very, very close to the field, and then it's built up instead of out, right? Like Brian Denny behind you is built more out. So whereas the Swamp is built up, and so it really kind of traps in all of that noise and everything else. So I think that that's probably what makes it so tough, is that the fans can be loud and rabid like all SEC fans can. But when you pack in 91,000, 92,000 fans that close, yelling and screaming, and they've done some stupid chants recently on third down, which hopefully like we can move away from because they're not successful. But like when that team is doing well, the loudest I ever remember that stadium was in 2006 when Florida played South Carolina, and we blocked a field goal to win and beat Steve Spurrier. And that kept Florida in path to ultimately then win the national championship. But the score was 17-16. They had already blocked one field goal, an extra point that game. And then they did it again. And Jarvis Moss jumped. And there's a video on YouTube. I encourage you guys to all go look at it. There is a half a second moment of silence between when the ball gets snapped and kicked to this massive uproar of the crowd. It's absolutely incredible. And, you know, it happened a few years ago when LaMichael P. Ryan ran, 80 yards or 85 yards against Auburn. That stadium can get electric. It's probably not as hard right now just because the team is a little bit, struggling a little bit. And I'll also say the University of Florida has also kind of changed demographics a lot over the last decade, right? They've really, really focused on how can they improve their rankings academically, and they were, they're a top 5 public school in the country now, and they're getting a lot of international students or a lot of academically focused students, which is like great, especially for like the fact that I have a degree there. I'm like, yeah, keep doing like that part. But like, I think the demographics have changed a little bit too, the fan base, but I think winning football will bring all of that back.
Absolutely. When your team is winning, you're a happier fan, you're a more energetic fan. And that helps your team win more. So it's a continuum.
Yeah.
And then my last question would be, I was talking about it today as, NFL kicks off and we're watching former players play. Anthony Richardson.
Yeah.
Certainly someone that as we were doing the podcast and he was playing, respected him, thought he was so darling in interviews, so respectful, and it really seemed to take responsibility for anything that went wrong, which you don't see a lot. You see a lot of people take glory, but not so much the responsibility. Loved that about him. But my boyfriend and I were talking today. I wonder if his college career and how much attention he got, because he didn't get a ton when he was playing in college. He got it after he went to the combine. We're like, oh my God, look at
who's this guy?
Do you think Florida was the right place for him?
That's a great question. I think there was a bit of a disservice done to him at the University of Florida. So I want to take everybody kind of back. Anthony Richardson was a three-star recruit. He lived in Gainesville, from Gainesville. Florida wanted to recruit 2 quarterbacks that year. They ended up with him and they wanted to get 2, but they ended up with Anthony Richardson. He was in the class, decommitted. Then they ultimately got him. They played Emory Jones over Anthony Richardson. And at some point we had to know that experiment was over. And Emory Jones just wasn't that guy. He kind of proved that when he went to Arizona State and then Cincinnati, he was fine, but you have this kind of Ferrari that's sitting back there and you never really gave him the opportunity to play. So a couple things though. One, Anthony Richardson has never had a healthy season of playing football since like freshman year of high school. So he's got to figure out a way to get healthy. I think his confidence really got rattled when everybody's like, play Anthony Richardson. And then they did against Georgia. And like the score was tight until like the end of the second quarter. And I think he threw 2 or 3 interceptions and Georgia scored. And I mean, at that point, your confidence has to get rattled because then he got benched again. Right. And then Billy Napier got hired, and I don't know if Anthony Richardson knew that he would be drafted 5th overall. I do think he knew that he would be, based on the combine, a potential first-round draft pick. So I think he played a little timid that year as well. And I think that there was some frustration at UF because of that. He wasn't running the way he was early on in his career, kind of what his size and stature should be, running and moving the ball. He was never a terribly accurate quarterback. I don't think he still is. He has a cannon for an arm, which you saw earlier today, right? I mean, he threw a ball like 66, 70 or 68 yards in the air is insane, right? On 1 foot. But, I don't know, like, it's tough because if Dan Mullen tries a little harder and isn't like so focused on leveraging the UF job to try to get a job in the NFL, maybe it works out better. Maybe if his first game isn't against Georgia, it works out. Maybe if he doesn't get injured, multiple times during his career, maybe it works out differently. But like in hindsight, it's like, yeah, it probably wasn't the best for him to go to Florida. But at the end of the day, he was the number 5 overall draft pick. He's playing in the NFL now. So, who's to know? But yeah, I mean, you never really saw Anthony Richardson, the number 5 draft pick, ever at Florida. Maybe 1 or 2 passes a game, but
yeah. Well,
those
Dan,
are my random ones that I just kind of threw at you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I've not been asked that question.
Yeah. Well, Dan, we want to be respectful of your time and let you get out of here. But real quick, before we do, what are your expectations for the A&M game coming up this weekend? I think A&M is favored by, I think, like 3.5 right now. So it should be pretty close.
Yeah. I think A&M's got an incredibly athletic defensive line, and Florida really struggled against Miami's defensive line, which I think Texas A&M's is just as good, if not better. So that's going to be a real matchup problem for the Gators. The Gators have a relatively strong left side from center to the left side of the offensive line. Their right side really struggled 2 games in a row now. So that's going to be a big issue, I think, for Florida. I think Florida's got talent, and I think it'll be interesting to see, do we get Graham Mertz back, or does DJ Lagway start after his performance? I think the fans want to see DJ Lagway. I mean, you kind of know what you're getting out of Graham Mertz. So how does that situation play out? How much is DJ Lagway going to play? And what does that do for the offense? Because Florida struggled in the first half against Samford. I mean, they did have a fumble at the goal line, but I mean, they were only up 14-0 at halftime against Samford. And that's a team that lost to the University of West Georgia the week before. They ended up scoring a lot of points in the second half, but what does the offense look like? And, the defense, just needs to continue to keep pressure and find ways to create pressure in the SEC. They were able to do it against Samford, but I'm worried about Texas A&M's defensive line, especially if Graham Mertz is a starting quarterback, because that just puts him in situations where he's uncomfortable. And I don't think that Florida can win if Texas's defensive line dominates that game.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's shaping up to be an exciting game. And then also real quick, where can everyone find you and your podcast on the social medias? What are the handles for that?
Well, I really appreciate you guys having me. The podcast is Stadium and Gale. That's Gale. That's the intersection where the stadium is, football or Stadium Road and Gale Lemerand. So Stadium and Gale is the podcast. You can find us on all the podcast streaming platforms and YouTube. You can find us on social media at Stadium and Gale. And my personal is DK Thompson.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a blast talking to you.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Thanks,
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Let's do it again.
Have a good one, guys.
You too.
Awesome. Thank
All right. Well, what a great interview. Dan was a great interview, and I learned a lot from him. It was great.
I don't usually have good things to say about anything associated with the University of Florida, but Dan's good people. Dan's good people.
It's true.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. We don't get to talk to very many Florida fans, certainly not as of late. So it was nice to have a good open conversation with them and talk about some good history at UF.
Yeah.
I also appreciated how candid he was about the Napier situation. I thought he did a great job of laying that out in a very kind of logical and rational viewpoint, which, as college football fans, it's kind of hard to remain rational. And I feel like he did a pretty good job of that. So good. So kudos to him for that. Let's give him a helmet sticker.
Yeah, exactly.
The helmet sticker.
That's right. He was very real, and I appreciated that. So, all right, well, let's go ahead and talk about next week's matchups.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
All right, well, first up, we've got Alabama 2-0 at Wisconsin, noon on Fox. We don't have a lot to go off of with Wisconsin as far as who they've played. It's going to be a hard-fought game, but I think Bama is able to rectify a few things that they've seen last week. As we've heard many times, sometimes when you lose a game or if you have a very poor performance in a game that you shouldn't, that's exactly what you need to identify the weaknesses. And I think that is kind of what we see here. I've got Bama winning this one 31-21. Jesse?
Clean it up, young men. Proctor, please get healthy for the love of God. We got to get better. All the protections. It's not just pass protection. All the protections got to get better. But I do agree. I think the Tide starts to clean some things up. I hope DeBoer has a Saban mentality of we are not going to accept these penalties moving forward. Let's clean it up now. So I'm going to pick the Tide rolling into Madison 31-24.
Okay, Matt.
Oh man, listen, I want to pick Wisconsin. I want to. I really feel like I haven't been overly impressed with what we've seen out of Bama so far. They struggled this past week. But I'm gonna go with Bama. I don't want to, but man, all right, Bama 28-20.
Okay. Well, it should be a good one. Next, we've got LSU at 1-1 at South Carolina, 2-0, noon on ABC. South Carolina surprised us last week, but I think LSU has a little bit too much offense with Nussmeier and company. I'm going LSU here, 28-21. Jesse?
I was oscillating back and forth on this one just because I don't know what to expect out of South Carolina. And yes, they're going back home to Columbia, which should be good. But I also remember that Carolina would do really big things and then really bad things. And so I just don't know, but I'm inclined to pick the Tigers in this one. I think it's going to be a good game. So I'm going to go LSU 28-27.
All right, Matt.
I know. It's hard.
Listen, again, South Carolina's Jekyll and Hyde. Who are we going to get this week? Because if you have the good team show up, then maybe they got a chance to win this thing. But I think they're going to take a step back this week. I think Beamer's going to have the old red face before this one's over. So I'm going to say LSU wins this thing, but I think it's going to be a late touchdown that puts them ahead. So LSU wins 20-14.
Yeah, how much does Sandstorm inspire South Carolina this week? We'll find out. So.
It's also this is what game day's going to this week.
Oh, is it? I haven't heard yet.
It is, and
interesting.
And I mean, no disrespect whatsoever towards LSU or South Carolina here, but that's the best matchup this week. That's a rough slate. That's a really rough slate.
I was surprised they didn't do Alabama, Wisconsin, just because it's two different conferences.
Right.
That I don't know.
The rest of this country must be really like everybody's playing a cupcake this week. That's the only thing.
And September in Madison is beautiful before it gets really cold.
Yeah, go now before it gets bitterly cold. Next is Boston College 2-0 at Missouri 2-0. That's 12:45 on the SEC Network. Boston College has had some great moments in this young season, including beating FSU. But I think Missouri takes care of this one. I've got MIZ 35-21. Jesse?
I'm also going to go MIZ-ZOU 31-17.
Matt? Yeah, Drinky gets another win. And again, that schedule's soft as Charmin. I don't care what anyone says. Mizzou wins 42-20.
All right. Next is Tulane 1-1 at Oklahoma 2-0, 3:30 on ESPN. I think Oklahoma kind of messes around a little bit like they did against Houston, but ultimately they get the dub. I'm going Oklahoma 31-17 here. Jesse, what do you got?
Yeah, I would have to agree. I think that Houston game kind of had them shaking a little bit, and they were able to pull it out, but it was not great for a while. I am going to pick the Sooners in this one, but I think it's closer than I would have initially thought. So I'm going 30-21.
Okay, Matt.
Again, I think Oklahoma's going to right the ship here. I think they're going to get going. Tulane's 1-1 right now. I didn't look at who they've lost to, but it's Tulane. I'm going to say Okie wins 40-24. By the way, fun little sidebar. This is a new SEC member playing an original chartered member.
That's true.
The SEC.
That's true.
There's that for you.
Yeah.
Fun times.
Good historic fact there. All right, let's get to Texas A&M 1-1 at Florida 1-1, 3:30 on ABC. I think so. This one's going to be an interesting one, and we obviously talked with Dan about it a little bit. I think Florida keeps their defense keeps things close. I think Connor Wigman helps them out maybe with a pick or two, but I think A&M is able to hold on here in the swamp 21-17. Jesse, what do you got?
Yeah, I agree with kind of this discussion we had with Dan. I think that Texas A&M is going to give them trouble. It's at home. You would hope that they could pull it out, but I just don't know that Florida's got what it takes right now. So I'm going to pick the Aggies 34-31. It's going to stay close for a little bit, but Aggie Land's going to pull it out.
Okay. Matt, what you got?
Again, I had the gut instinct to pick Florida here, thinking surely they won't drop 2 at home. But then I remembered our conversation that we just had with our new friend, and I'm going to have to pick TAMU here as well. I'm going to say 28-24 Aggies.
Okay. All right. Moving on to UAB at 1-1 at Arkansas, also 1-1, 4:15 on the SEC Network. It's a home game for Arkansas, and their offense has looked really good so far this year. I'm going Arkansas 42-10 here. Jesse?
I think they are hurting after losing in the way that they did this past weekend. So I think they're going to right the ship. I think they're mad. Luckily, they're back at home. So I'm going to go with the Razorbacks in this one. And I'm going to pick them, let's see, 38-9.
Okay.
Not even giving them a touchdown, Jesse? Dang.
No, I think Arkansas is mad.
That's fair. Yeah, I think Arkansas is going to come out and uncork it on them. So I think Arkansas is probably going to pull this one away early. I'm going to say Arkansas wins 45-10.
All right.
They get a touchdown. They just don't get the extra point.
Oh, that's true. Could happen.
They go for 2 and miss it.
Sometimes it happens, yeah. Ole Miss 2-0 at Wake Forest 1-1, 6:30 on the CW. So, yeah. Keeping on the theme of offense, Ole Miss goes off here, and they win 45-13 is what I'm going with. Jesse, what do you got?
I'm gonna pick them. Ole Miss, they've just been showing out. I mean, again, we've only had 2 games, but still, it's been nuts. Jackson Dart just having a record-setting weekend. So I'm gonna go with Ole Miss 52-10.
I'm sorry, I'm just cracking up at the CW.
No,
I love it.
Sorry, I'm gonna go 52-11.
52-11.
What are you doing, Jesse? You can have 52-10. I can change mine.
52-11.
Okay, fine. Whatever you want to do, that's okay.
$1, Bob. $1.
Right.
It's on the CW. Did they
Oh.
book in that with One Tree Hill and
Yeah.
I love it.
what was the other one? One Tree Hill. Yeah, no, there was what was the other one?
Oh man, I
They used
think I
to
know what you're
play.
talking about, but it's
It
not
was
coming to
right
me.
after One Tree Hill back in the day. That's the only reason why.
Vampire Diaries.
Yes, there we
There you
go.
go. Matt, what do you got?
God. What are we? Which game are we talking
Ole
about? I
Miss
got
and Wake
distracted by
Forest.
mid-odd CW stuff. Um, Wake Forest? Do they even still play football? I thought they
The
were a
Demon
basketball school.
Deacons. Yeah.
Ole Miss 52-10.
All right. Next is the University of Texas San Antonio, 1-1 at Texas, 2-0, 7 p.m. on ESPN. Look, this is a lesser opponent. I think Texas wants to continue to announce their presence and will continue their dominance against a lesser opponent. I've got Texas 63-0 here. Jesse, what do you got?
Yeah, they just took that number 2 spot. They're not giving it away. They're only going up. So I am going to pick the Longhorns here in a rough run for UTSA, 52-0.
All right, Matt.
Y'all making me self-conscious about my picks because I said initially 42-3, and I'm like, that sounds right? And now that I'm looking at y'all scores, I'm like, I'll bump it up, give them one more
Just
touchdown.
be true to yourself, man. Don't let
No,
us
no, no,
influence
no,
you.
no. I'm gonna let the group influence me. I'll be the follower today. So I'm gonna say Texas wins 49-3.
All right. Next, Vanderbilt 2-0 at Georgia State, 1-1, 7 p.m. on ESPN Plus. I'm going to say Vandy moves to 3-0 here with that inspired defense and great quarterback play from Diego Pavia. 38-10 over Georgia State. Jesse, what do you got?
Okay. I'm also going to go with Vandy on this one. I don't think it's gonna be a shutout like it was with Alcorn, but I'm going Vandy 31-14.
All right, Matt, what do you got?
Listen, I've been real high on Vandy the last couple weeks, but I think I think this is probably where
Like a reality check
it
time?
starts to slide back in. Vanderbilt's only favored by 10 in this ball game, so I'm gonna say that Georgia State keeps it close, and but Vandy's ultimately gonna win, so 28-20.
All right. Now Georgia 2-0 at Kentucky, 1-1, 7:30 on ABC. This is a night game at Kroger Field. You never know, anything could happen. Look, Kentucky looked big time sus last week against SC at home. So I think the Dogs should be okay in this one. If the defense can pressure Brock Vandagriff or whoever's behind center and force some turnovers, I think this one might get pretty lopsided if they're able to do that. I got Georgia winning here 35-10. Jesse, what do you got?
I have every expectation that Brock Vandagriff is going to make sure that he starts this football game. He is from right outside of Athens. He sat in Athens. And he's going to want to make a big splash here. I also think Kentucky was very embarrassed at losing to South Carolina, especially in the manner in which they did, very sloppily. I think they're going to be cleaning it up. I think this game is going to be close at half. Georgia's going to run away with it in the third and the fourth, but I'm going UGA in a closer than probably most people are thinking, 38-31.
Watch Vandagriff just go off against his old team. Matt, what do you got?
Going off of what ESPN's told me, UGA is favored by 23.5 in this game. So, Jesse, I hate to bet against Vegas. I really do, but I don't see that. So I'm going to pick UGA here. Vandagriff won't throw for 5 picks. He'll throw for at least a couple. So UGA wins this one 38-14.
All right, next is New Mexico, 0-2 at Auburn, 1-1, 7:30 on ESPN2. Yeah, I think Auburn wants to get that bad taste out of their mouth, and I think they will against New Mexico. Not New Mexico State, by the way. I had to double check that. I was like, didn't they lose last year? Different team. New Mexico here. So Auburn wins here. I've got them winning 31-7. Jesse?
Yeah, the Auburn faithful are not happy. My Instagram was showing a lot of very unhappy Auburn fans that I know, some of which threw away their jerseys.
Oh, gosh.
That's
yeah,
serious.
It got that bad. I saw that video. So I am going to pick the Tigers. They are embarrassed. It's kind of the same song and dance all the way down here, but they're embarrassed. Luckily, they've got New Mexico to tune it up, but they have to tune it up. They've got to take care of the football because otherwise you're losing to New Mexico. You can't have 5 turnovers. I don't care who it's against. But I'm going to pick the Tigers in this one, 28-10.
Makes me think of the Fansville commercial where everybody's just giving up on their team and throwing their stuff away. And
Yeah. He's like, it was the first play.
right. Oh, yeah. Matt, who you got here?
Yeah, Auburn. I think they're probably. I think Hugh Freeze is probably going to have to do some soul searching this week and be like, yeah, we need to fix everything. So yeah, I think Auburn wins this thing 42, but it's going to be weird, 42-15.
Oh, okay. All right, next is Toledo, 2-0 at Mississippi State, 1-1, 7:30 on ESPNU. Look, Toledo has beaten Duquesne and UMass, so that's why they're 2-0. But I think Mississippi State will get back in that win column here. I got Mississippi State 35-7. Jesse, what do you got?
I agree. I think they were getting there against Arizona, so I'm going to pick the Bulldogs in this one. Plus, they're back at home, 31-10.
Okay, Matt.
Again, the spread's only 9.5.
I don't know why I have so much faith in them. I'm
going to go ahead and go back with Mississippi State. I can't bet against their own conference, especially to a team that one of their hallmark wins is against UMass. The Minutemen. No.
All right. Did you say the score?
Oh, yes. Mississippi State 28-20.
Okay, cool.
My bad.
All right. No, you're good. Final game, Kent State 0-2 at Tennessee 2-0, 7:45 on SEC Network. Tennessee's offense goes wild here, 63-6. Jesse, what do you got?
Yeah, I feel bad for Kent State. They're having to go into Neyland Stadium at night. Tennessee's coming off a big win, and it's not gonna be fun for them. But I'm gonna pick the Vols in this one, 56-3, and the 3 is like real late.
Yeah, just Okay, Matt, please tell us your pick.
So, Tennessee is a 48-point favorite in this game. I'm going to say that Tennessee wins this thing after about 12 touchdown passes from Nico, 120-10.
All right, I'm locking that one in now. You can't
No.
change it.
No. I'm going to change it.
Okay.
I'm going to say 56-6.
Okay. Yeah, they should definitely go off on that one. So, yeah. So there's some interesting matchups coming up this week. Obviously, we will get more interesting matchups as we get into SEC play, but still a few interesting ones here. So that does it for this week's episode. We had a great guest. Appreciate Dan coming on the program. It was great to talk to him. If you would like to contact us, please do so you can email us at pigskinsandpageantry@gmail.com. We are at Pigskins and Pageantry on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. We are at PPSEC Podcast on X. And don't forget, we are available for download on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon Music, TuneIn Radio, and most podcasting apps for iPhone, Android, and other operating systems. If you enjoyed the show, please take a moment and subscribe. We would love that 5-star review to give us better visibility and continue to have fantastic conversations with people like yourself. And we appreciate you joining in on YouTube and TikTok. Yes, even the ridiculous comments, we're entertained. So we appreciate that. So until next time, this is Wes. Go Dogs.
All right, Tide. Let's clean it up, boys. Roll Tide.
What can I say, guys? It's good to be a Tennessee fan. Golden flashes from Kent State, more like golden flushes. Go Big Orange. See you next week.